Hello everyone. Welcome to the second day of TestMu conference. I am Vipul, your host for this session. This talk is about test observability, a paradigm shift from automation to autonomous to deep observability for better ROI. In this session, we will cover various testing strategies that will take us from test automation to autonomous testing, but that is not all. We will be introduced you to the game-changing concept of test observability. With that, let me introduce you to the speaker of this amazing and insightful session on test observability, Vijay Kumar Sharma. Vijay has industry experience of more than 18 years in quality engineering. He has been a driving force behind quality excellence at prominent companies like Adobe, Sumo Logic. With a wealth of knowledge and passion for innovation, he has become sought after figure in the testing community. His insights have graced various testing conferences across India, leaving audiences inspired and enlightened. Before we move on, let's take care of one last thing that if you have any question, please feel free to move to Q&A section where you can put the right question. We will be taking those questions at the end of the session. And if we are short on any time, some question get unanswered, you can head over to the Lambda test community. We have a thread open for this discussion and we will be answering all your questions in that thread. Now it is a time to start this talk and let's please welcome Vijay on the stage. So Vijay is here. Let's begin. Hi Vijay, how are you doing today?
Hey, Vipul. Good. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having good time, attending different sessions of the conference and enjoying different tracks. And thanks, Vipul and team for, helping me sort of come up with this and give this opportunity to sort of talk about a very important and, something very important topic and something which I think have lived for last 6 years and will try to sort of share some of the parts of the journey through this talk. I think let's get started and let me sort of share what exactly we want to do. And I would say feel free to share your questions. We'll try, if it aligns with the flow of the conversation, we'll try to address them and have make it more interactive. But broadly, what we intend to do here is we'll sort of look at how testing has evolved over last 2 decades, as software industry shifted from you know desktop kind of products to mobile and then cloud. And today, that complexity is constantly increasing. Different kind of technology stacks are coming, different types of softwares are coming, and different kinds of integrations. So all that essentially translates into different challenges for testing industry, right? So we'll get a sense of how we have shifted so far, and how testing evolved with that. And then we will try to understand what exactly is observability in general, and why it's important, it's equally important in testing space, and how it helped me and my team, and probably can help many of you. And by the way, just to be clear, many of these things may come across like, oh, this is like very obvious thing to do, and you may already be doing it. Yeah, you may not be articulating it as a test observability, but probably will try to give it a structure during this conversation, and hope it helps some of you to sort of start thinking in this direction overall, right? So that's broadly the agenda for this conversation, right? So uh, as I was saying, that I mean, software industry sees changes, like significant changes every 5 years or so, and this frequency is you know changing, and probably becoming faster. You're seeing more transitions in the time frame of 2 to 3 years, which means that different ways of developing softwares have evolved over a period of time. And as those ways changed, all of us had to adopt a modern way of testing softwares. Now there are different terminologies that you see on the slide, which evolved in last 2 decades in terms of moving from waterfall to agile. Test automation. And by the way, test automation itself used to be a big thing. Testers used to distinguish, okay, I do test automation through tools like qtp in desktop world, and then that used to be a very special thing. But now suddenly we are in a space where automation is a very obvious thing in any workspace. We cannot live without that. And then there are other important aspects in terms of, okay, now we have it, and with increasing complexity, our test infrastructures are also becoming complex, right? So how do we keep a tab on what's going on in my test infrastructure, and how do I make decisions to keep it you know uh, efficient, and constantly how do I keep a track of, is it giving me right ROI or not? There are a lot of other things. We'll try to uncover them one by one. But what I wanted to establish here is that there are a lot of changes that software industry saw, and accordingly testing philosophies, testing tooling, the way we test softwares has changed a lot, right? And test observability is something which I personally believe is already there in many of the organizations and is going to mature over a period of time, and we'll see how that'll happen. So before we jump on to test observability, let's try to understand what observability in general means, right? And by the way, I work with Sumo Logic. Sumo Logic is essentially an observability platform which helps different software companies, especially SaaS-based products, to ensure that their services are working fine and are secure, and there are multiple other use cases, right? So essentially, it helps you keep a track of what's happening in my system. And by the way, when I say system, so for example, let's try to take an example, right? So Twitter is running multiple services across the globe to serve different capabilities on their product or platform, whatever you want to call it, right? And now you want to ensure that everybody at this point of time should be able to tweet in X number of milliseconds. Now, how do you keep a tab that every user of Twitter is able to do it? You need a sophisticated sort of solution which helps you monitor all your infrastructure at infrastructure layer, application layer, and even at network layer, right? So anything that is part of your product has to be monitored in such a way that you proactively get to know if something is degrading. So for example, if right now sitting in Delhi, if I'm not able to tweet within a second, Twitter may want to know it, because I will not be the only customer probably facing that problem. And when you know it, you would want to figure out what exactly is happening. Is it happening only in my region, or is it being faced by multiple customers? How many customers are impacted at this point of time? What might be causing it? So essentially, you put a lot of your metadata into a platform kind like Sumo Logic, and Sumo Logic gives you capability of sort of giving that observability. What is happening in your infrastructure, why it may be happening, and give you insights so that you quickly jump onto the problem, figure out a root cause, fix it, and see, okay, everything is looking sane and all that stuff. So essentially, observability is a way of getting right insights at right time and understand your system in a much better way without a lot of manual intervention, so that you ensure that your services are running fine and there's no business impact on that, right? That's broadly observability. Now, what exactly is test observability? As I was saying, testing is also becoming more complex with complexity of these softwares, right? And we have multiple automation tools. We have different tooling and frameworks in our CI/CD pipeline. If we are testing a SaaS product that is being hosted in multiple availability zones, there are different deployments. How do I ensure that all of that is running fine? I'm constantly running, writing multiple tests, and then how do I monitor them on regular basis? It becomes like it's an incremental exercise, you can imagine, right? With years, like your test repository will inflate, and like it'll be more challenging for you to track that. I'm just sharing the very basic thing which all of you must have experienced when you have seen, a life cycle of a product over the years. This is very natural that your infrastructure starts becoming complex, and knowing objectively about what's happening there becomes more important, because that's the only way you can make smart decisions. So essentially, it's if I put it in simple form, it's kind of analytics of your test infrastructure, which shows you some symptoms, and then you look at symptoms which are important for you and try to go to the root cause and figure out, okay, what kind of decision do I need to make right now to make my testing life cycle or test infrastructure efficient. Now we'll go into those definitions and a lot of other things which will be part of it, but broadly what I'm trying to say here is that, like, softwares need different kind of observability solutions to ensure availability, performance, security. Your test infrastructure also needs certain kinds of visibility, which helps you making right decisions and also reduce probably your overheads. And we'll talk about some of those overheads in specific. So why test observability, right? And I think I've been touching upon it, but probably I'll try to share some examples here, right? I think some of these things are very obvious. Like, as testers, like if we try to achieve 100% of test coverage, it's beyond a point, it start adding a lot of inefficiencies. We all know that. But what is that optimal point? How will you decide that? You need some kind of smart insights to make that informed decision. Otherwise, it's just you go with an aim that keep repeating. But can there be a better way of doing it, right? So I would encourage all of you to think of these questions, which you may have asked you and your teams in the past, but try to think about the same questions without any preconceived solution in your mind. Just ask that question and try to figure out what precise thing that you want to figure out. So, like, other thing, for example, my favorite one is, you have, say, thousands of tests running in your different environments now, and you keep adding your tests. How many of those tests are really giving you some value? If there are tests which are running almost every day or probably multiple times in a day, and they have never failed in last 6 months, you should be curious what's exactly happening here. And there can be multiple reasons for that. But point is, are you aware of it is most important thing. If you're not aware, you'll keep adding inefficiencies into your system, and they will keep increasing. And with the time, it will become very, very difficult to track. So you need mechanisms to constantly sort of keep a tab of it, right? You may want to have some frequency at which you look at these analytics and say, oh, these many tests never failed in this much time. What do I do with them? Maybe first of all, I'll simply disable them and then probably do some analysis, right? Or imagine that your test execution time has increased, or probably when you're running multiple tests, there's some level of flakiness. So how do you decide, what do you do to reduce this set? So you need certain kind of insights to make an informed decision about it. That's one of the example, and probably there are more examples that I have listed here. Hope you're sort of looking at it. Like, this is another, like the last one mentioned on this slide. Tests which are running at very high frequency are failing at high frequency, and tests which are running at low frequency are also failing at, like, the failures are less. How do you compare these two scenarios? Where do you need to pay attention first? You may need some additional metadata about those test runs or those tests, which will help you probably navigate through and figure out in an objective way that, oh, this is something that I want to pick, I want to look at it. And gradually, every problem statement that you will put in front of you will try to measure it through some kind of metadata, meta logs from your test infrastructure and see. So all these questions establish a foundation why you need a test observability, right? And hope I'm making sense, and feel free to sort of share if you have any other experiences or any questions. I'm not looking at the chat very actively, but yeah, I don't think I see anything so far, so I'll keep going. Okay, so this is another bucket of things where, like, how do you figure out ROI of your tests that you're running, or how do you figure out ROI of different investment that you do on different kind of toolings or frameworks, right? So it's very important to correlate the outcome that you get out of your test with what's happening within your business boundaries, like how escalation data is correlating with your regression data, for example. Is there any correlation? No correlation. Why is that? It sets a tone for, and by the way, all of that you can do manually, but I'm not saying that you should do that, right? So we'll soon come to a stage where we'll talk about, okay, how can you achieve it in a much efficient way. So first, I'm trying to say that I'm trying to establish that there are many questions which we encounter on regular basis, if not daily, weekly. There are some instances when we question ourselves, okay, are we going in right direction? At times we try to challenge status quo, and that's the moment when we have a lot of questions, but how to answer them is something that your test observability approach can help you figure out. I'll not spend a lot of time on these slides. I would say I'll probably show the third one on the screen just for you to look at it. These are some of the basic questions I have tried to list down, which most of us encounter when we are ensuring quality of our softwares that we are building, right? And there are many more like this which demand the need for your test observability strategy. Now, how to begin your journey with test observability, right? At the end, I'll conclude it with this. Before that, I'll share our journey, my team's journey in Sumo Logic. But the most important thing is, because all of us are working on testing different kinds of softwares, they have different release cycles, they have different deployment frequencies, they have different kind of stakeholders, they have different evolution speed, and different ways these products are pivoting. So the strategy will not be same for us. All of us need to think of the most important things that we want to answer first, and that's how it starts. So what really is your biggest pain point at this point of time in your software testing journey? That's where it starts. So you define that and then try to quantify, and then you figure out, oh, how do I implement it in a way that I don't need to do it manually? Some tool or some framework should give me all these insights on continuous basis, and then I keep evolving my problem statement and I keep evolving my test observability infrastructure. With that, I'll move to the section where I'll share briefly about how it started for us, like my team, when we started this journey in 2017, and how it evolved. It's not the whole journey, I would say, but I have picked some of the basic examples which I hope you all will be able to relate to, and what kind of implementation we did and how we get those insights to our test observability, you can say, setup, right? So the beginning was more like, as I said, we had certain problems on the table. So Sumo Logic as a SaaS product is deployed on different regions, and these different regions have different kinds of customers, and you can imagine the scale, the data flow, and the use cases, seasonality. All of this will vary across deployments, right? So the very first thing for us was that when we are testing across these deployments, how do I know in a quick glance that what's the health of my deployments? That's the very first question that we wanted to answer, right? The next thing is that if something breaks, how much is the impact? What's the blast radius of that failure? It's very, very important to measure that, because as I said, it's not one thing that's failing in your infrastructure at any point of time. There are n number of things. How do you prioritize? How do you figure out? So you need to define, okay, how, which failure is more critical than others. It's like in security world, you have multiple threats. Which threat you want to address right now versus the next priority? That's what you need to do in testing as well, right? Especially when you have business critical softwares running all the time and your customers are really using, and it has real dollar impact on that. So, and then imagine, all these deployments have thousands of tests running at a very high frequency. When your 100% plus microservices are running on these deployments, like hundreds of failures can happen, right? Now, will you have your team members sit and debug them one by one, or would you want to have a mechanism which tell you this failure is most prominent and causing these 150 failures, for example, right? So you want to be smart about debugging, or probably auto debugging up to some extent. If 80% of that can be achieved in an automatic way, it gives you a lot of confidence, and it paves a path which is relatively simpler, and you gain more confidence in terms of reaching the root cause, right? So that's very, very important. And by the way, this was a constant challenge for us as we were sort of investing more into writing tests and all that stuff. In SaaS world, most of us are deploying our microservices very, very fast. So our CI/CD pipelines are really, taking a lot of load, and success of those CI/CD pipelines are really dependent on tests that we run on them, right? So you also want to monitor them on constant basis, but again through tools, not like some human doing all that stuff for you. So you want to monitor it, but you only want to be flagged when there is some critical situation in front of you, and there can be a lot of things. So these are some of the statements that we started with and we encountered in the beginning, and that's what we tried to solve, right? So I'll take one example and we'll try to explain, but this we did for multiple, I would say, tools and frameworks we had. The view that you see on the screen right now is the view which gives us, a visibility into what's the health of my deployments with respect to Selenium UI tests that we run. Just to give you an idea, these are like, so we run tests on different triggers in our CI/CD pipeline when multiple microservices are deployed. So there are different triggers when these tests sort of start running, pass, fail, blah, blah, blah. And then, so what I mean to say is there is very high frequency and there is very high amount of tests those are running to certify these deployments and ensuring that any new change which is going to these deployments is kind of test in production. You can think of that. And this view always gives us insights how my different deployments are doing. And in one of the deployments, which you see orange or less, a success rate, what you need to do, where you need to pay attention. So this is very first view that we get. This is a dashboard that you see. This we built in Sumo Logic. How it's built. So essentially, when you're running your tests on Selenium Grid, all the test results and logs are pumped into Sumo Logic. There are different kinds of search queries that we created and applied different operators that help you look into those logs, aggregate them, figure out the patterns, and tell you, okay, what's the state. So finally, you see this view, but each this rainbow kind of thing that you see, you can click on it and you can go to next view for that deployment and go into further details. So you can have hierarchy of dashboards which give you all the details in few clicks. You're not doing anything here. Your tests are running in your CI/CD pipeline and you're getting all those insights here in a way which is driven by your workflow in terms of how you want to get a visibility into your test infrastructure, right? Uh, the other uh, challenge which I was telling, that now you can imagine thousands of these tests running. And by the way, I'm only talking about UI tests. There are different API tests, security tests, chaos tests running on these deployments. Now, when they fail, how would you even sort of triage them? How will you sort of uh, you know imagine the amount of time you have to spend to reach a root cause. Now, what we do here is, again, we use our platform because we have all the uh, failure logs with us for all the tests. We can easily figure out that this particular failure is causing, you know, this particular error is causing failure in, say, these 15. So we bucketize our test failures on the basis of common root cause. Now imagine this is happening automatically. Like, nobody's putting any efforts here. So anything that is failing in your infrastructure, we have pre-built dashboards, we have pre-built searches which show us what is the root cause, and then we look at the root cause. We don't need to go to the test. We fix that root cause, and automatically all your tests will be green, right? So this was, and you can imagine the amount of time that we saved because of this. Earlier, I can tell you, 3 to 4 people constantly looking at the failures, debugging them and all that. There may be other smart ways, but this is how we are solving it. Now, the other thing is, basically, when you are building super solid SaaS platforms, you chase some of the industry standards like DORA metrics, and to be successful on that, you again need to measure it. So the dashboard that you see here is not really a Sumo Logic dashboard. This is Sumo Logic, integration with Atlassian, and that is giving us different insights about what's happening across the tools to monitor what is our deployment frequency, what's the lead time, where we are lagging, why we are lagging. You go into different levels of those data points and figure out where you need to pay attention, which of your assemblies are DORA Elite, which of our, DORA Elite today, but tomorrow something else, and all that stuff. So essentially, if you don't have these insights, it's very hard to do all this stuff manually, right? Like, try to imagine like multiple microservices and all that stuff, right? So this is another sort of dashboard that you see, sample dashboard, where it's giving us insights about when something is being integrated into our CI/CD pipeline. Think of it as like one microservice being deployed, and it's being deployed, say, 100 times in a week. Now, out of those 100 times, how many times it succeeded, how many times it failed? So first, you want to know what's the success rate for that microservice. And if, for example, a microservice CI/CD pipeline is breaking, say, 80% of the time, the next thing you would want to know is why it's happening. Is it failing at the deployment level? Is it happening because of test flakiness? Is it happening because of some other misconfigurations? So can you figure that out automatically, again, through all the logs that you push to Sumo Logic through your CI/CD infrastructure, right? So this dashboard, again, is giving you real-time insights about your CI/CD pipeline and telling you where you need to pay attention and what is the problem and what do you need to do. So essentially, you need to just solve the problem. You don't need to spend any time figuring out. Of course, I'm not saying it's all these things are absolutely perfect. Over the period of time, you figure out more edge cases in terms of insights and all that, and then you put that into this whole framework. In the sense, you'll probably create new dashboard for those insights, or you'll probably improve your search queries on that metadata from your CI/CD pipeline, and you keep evolving that. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that all this is happening instantly. You're not doing anything. You have to just establish it once. You have to just push in the data from your CI/CD tooling to a tool like Sumo Logic, and then think of your business logic, convert that into some query, create a dashboard, and start looking at it. This is very simple. I mean, we measure flakiness of our test and all that stuff, and there are different logics on the basis of which we define this is flaky, this is not flaky, and all that stuff. The logic keep improving, but point is you keep translating that logic into the tool, and then that keep giving you insights. This is a pretty bad choice of, I would say, panel that I used here. Sorry for that. But what I want to establish here is that, again, if you know your CI/CD pipeline is very fast and there are multiple failures, you also want to categorize very clearly what kind of flakiness my infrastructure is seeing, and then what do I need to do about it. Maybe I want to switch them off immediately and then probably debug them, because they are anyway not giving you any returns, right? So the moment you have that information objectively available to you, your decision making becomes easier, right? So it's more about getting those insights and gaining that confidence of taking those informed risks as well. This is again the thing that I was talking when I was establishing why test observability is important. This is one exercise. I deliberately didn't add some of the dashboards here, but essentially this is one of the very important exercise that we do, is revisit our tests again, not manually, through very well defined SLOs. When SLOs break, we look into those tests. If those tests are useless, we just remove them from our sort of test repository, and we say, okay, we don't want to run these tests again. Typically it's hard as a tester to sort of get rid of tests, but when it's a data driven sort of approach, you gain confidence, because that test never yielded anything in last, say, 1 year, 6 months. So it becomes easier for you. It's backed by data. But otherwise, if you just look at it once, then how will you make that decision? It's very, very important. And by the way, I personally believe that most of the companies going forward will face this as the biggest problem, because test repositories keep bloating. If we don't keep them in control, you become very inefficient. So if you don't monitor them on regular basis and don't act on them, it is a lot of burden on your teams. It's a lot of inefficiency, and at times it increases a lot of flakiness in your system. When I say system, I'm saying your test infrastructure. With that, I would say, it's time for you to think about, and most probably, I'm very confident that most of you are measuring a lot of these things. It's just that probably there can be better ways of doing it. There are better tools available in the market through which you can aggregate all the data from all your test infrastructure, and you can smartly generate some insights which help you become more productive. By the way, you can save a lot of dollars through this exercise, because imagine exactly everything about what's exactly happening in your test infrastructure. What do you need, what you don't need, all that stuff. And over a period of time, you will save a lot of time, a lot of money. So it's very important to realize that value. And I'm sure when you can quantify it, you'll be able to sell it to your stakeholders, your leaders, that this is what I want to do, and this is what probably I want to set up in my company, in my product, and all that stuff. So figure out what are your top problems right now. If you don't have, say, top 5 immediate problems, try to anticipate what will be your near future problems, articulate them, try to quantify them, and figure out how do you put that in some sort of tooling which gives you real time insights and make you smarter in terms of making those decisions. With that, I'll say that's all I had. I know what I had planned and what I spoke is a lot different in terms of, but hope that it helped you understand that it's very, very important to think of your test observability strategy and start it now and keep refining it and I can guarantee that it'll yield a lot of results with time. You not realize it today, but your future will be like very promising with that kind of investment. Thanks all for your patience.
Thank you, Vijay. That was really insightful session, and many of your tips and tricks I would like to employ in Lambda test. So really appreciate that. We have couple of questions. We can quickly take those questions. So I will be bringing in this question to stage. So first question is, can you provide some examples how test observability can enhance testing process and outcomes? Which I think you already did, but
Yeah,
if you can little bit throw the
yeah,
light on this.
yeah. So thanks, Kumar, for asking this question. Hopefully, I addressed it, but let me emphasize on two of my very favorite and very simple use cases. Right. Uh, One simple thing is that for every product, we keep writing new tests, we keep building new features. Your test cases keep increasing. Now at times your product reaches a stage where some part of the product is not seeing any changes, but you're still testing it a lot, right? If you have test observability across the product, then you will clearly know which tests are not really yielding anything, and that will lead you to, and by the way, not even that, you can correlate your test data with your PR data as well, because end of the day you're bringing in all the metadata from this tooling. So you can bring in your Git data with your test failure and Jira data, you can correlate it and you would know, okay, probably this area is not even seeing any changes, discard these tests. And imagine the world when you have all these insights available all the time, which means you can literally do it every day, you can do it every week. That adds a lot of value. Other example which I gave about, which has a lot of process efficiency, when tests fail, a lot of testers have to go and debug those tests. I'm not saying you can 100% remove that, but you can be much smarter in terms of doing 80% of the work automatically, because you have all those test results and those are very rich logs. It's all about parsing those logs and figuring out correlations and patterns and figure out like why these 200 test cases are failing. Probably these four reasons. I have to just fix these four reasons. I am not doing any debugging for these 200 tests. It's a huge win. Hope I am able to explain that.
Certainly, Vijay. Let's take one more question. Okay. So here is it. What access do I need to use test observability? I think answer is simple, the data.
Yeah, so I would say, as I said, so yeah, you rightly said, Vipul, data, but I would say first two things are very important, as I mentioned in my last slide, right? What do you want to measure and how do you want to measure? If you figure out these two things on paper very clearly, then you need what kind of data you need, and then you need a tool which can process that data smartly for you and can give you those insights. So these 5-step process is very important. And of course, in terms of specific question, data is simpler answer. You need rich data from your test infrastructure and how you leverage that.
True. There is one more important question that I can see that we can also quickly touch up. So as a software system becomes more complex, how does the concept of deep observability transform the way organization approach troubleshooting, root cause analysis, and continuous
Yeah.
improvement?
Yeah. Thanks, Vishali. I think the answer is same what I answered for the first question, right? In terms of example, right? That's a clear cut. And I think when you articulated this question, probably you already know it, that, so like a lot of the testing teams spend time in finding root causes when failures happen, right? And if we take a data driven approach there, as I said, 80% of the effort can be saved, and then you only focus on the continuous improvement part in your question, right? Rest, like other things that you have mentioned, can be taken care through data and the insights from that tool. Continuous improvement essentially means that what you build today in your test observability approach may not hold true in next 6 months, because it has to evolve, because you're writing new kinds of tests for new kind of capabilities and probably will generate different kind of new metadata. So you need to keep a watch of that and keep evolving it. Otherwise, I think what I explained earlier is the answer for your question.
Right. We can take one last question. So this is by Jilpa. Could you share an example of a scenario where insights from test observability led to significant improvement in software development project?
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jalpa, for asking this question. I would say all the answers that I provided to other questions. I'll give another example. So, if I don't know if you're working on a SaaS product or not, but I'll give you an example of a SaaS product, typical SaaS product, right? So, essentially, imagine a world where 20 teams working on 100 microservices, pushing them to CI/CD pipeline, and they merge to the first test environment. Now imagine, say, 200, 300, or 1000 engineers contributing to it, right? Now any change by one developer can conflict with other microservice and things can break, right? And by the way, this is not an hypothetical example. Every company goes through it, and everybody has different solutions for it. Now the point is, whatever solution that you have implemented, are you able to measure efficiency of it or not? So I'll try to remind about the slide where I was showing, where we measure the efficiency of the CI/CD pipeline, so you clearly know which microservice is very smooth in the pipeline and which microservice is struggling the most. So you know where to prioritize. And then you also have DORA metrics associated. So you also know, amongst the top 5 concerning microservices, which is being deployed with high frequency. Probably that's the first problem you want to attack. So essentially it boils down to, you know uh, like keep looking at what you are doing, keep double clicking the insights that you get, and then it gives you something through which you're constantly evolving, basically. So I'll stop there. Maybe I'm repeating probably the same stuff that I was talking about. Yeah.
No, cool. Thank you, Vijay, for sharing your insights on test observability. Further, I would like to thank everyone who was a part of this incredible learning experience. We would be hosting all these sessions on the YouTube, so you can go back and listen to them again and share them with your peers. With that, we would like to end this session. Happy testing and have a great day ahead, everyone. And thank you, Vijay, once again for taking this session.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for your time. Hope it was helpful. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.